Hello, how are you today? We're going to talk about a difficult subject for many people to want to talk about, but a very important one for us. We're going to talk about conflict, particularly in the context of a group of people trying to make decisions and go forward in a positive way. We'll talk about four different things. One, we're going to define conflict. Then we're going to talk about something called the conflict continuum. Then we'll look at conflict styles and look at when the different conflict styles are appropriate, depending on what the goals for the group are. So, to get started, we want to look at defining conflict. Probably a common misconception or frequently used definition would be conflict is the struggle between incompatible or struggling needs, wishes, ideas, interests, or people. We tend to focus on the struggle and the incompatible part of that. Really, that's not the definition we want to look at. I was doing some research and reading a paper on conflict and research about conflict, and I found an interesting quote. It says, "People often believe that conflict happens to them and that it escalates uncontrollably. Defining conflict in terms of opposing interest reinforces this kind of reasoning, as people assume that as the conflict is competitive, they should try to win and to force their position. It may be difficult not to retaliate aggressively when the conflict is thought to be a win-lose proposition. But it is not necessary to assume conflict is competitive. People fight conflicts and make choices that may or may not escalate conflict. Conflict does not escalate itself." And in that, you see a lot of words that we think about when we consider conflict. We think about competition or aggressiveness or fighting, escalation. There's a lot of words in there. Uncontrolled. A lot of words in there that are, used to make it difficult for us to consider conflict and to consider it in a positive way at all. So here's how we want to define conflict. Conflict is the passionate, unfiltered debate around issues of importance to the team. We want cooperative conflict, not competitive conflict. The two words there that really should stand out are cooperative and competitive. Cooperative conflict recognizes that there is a tension. There is something, maybe there are disagreements, there are different ideas of solutions that are possible, but we're on the same page. We want to find the best solution and not just get past the conflict. It's easy to push things under the rug and say, well, we're just not going to decide or we're not going to resolve this issue because it's tense. That's not a good solution. So we don't want to compete and have my idea come to the front, but we want the best idea for us. And I think that cooperative word in there is particularly important. So when we think about conflict, we want to be aware of the conflict continuum. And on one end of the conflict continuum, there is zero conflict, or what could be called artificial harmony. On this end, people appear to be on the same page, to be getting along, but they're not really cooperating, they're not really connecting, they're not really understanding each other. On the opposite end is very intense, harsh, ill-intentioned conflict. This is conflict that is intended to hurt the other person, conflict for the sake of conflict. Clearly, you don't want to be there. This is negative, non-productive, not useful for us at all. However, most organizations, most of the time, find themselves toward the zero conflict end of the spectrum. That means we have a decision to be made. Let's do the one that has the least tension, the least amount of conflict involved, which means it's often difficult to find the best conflict because we're not cooperating to find the best conflict. We're cooperating to not have any tension, which is a different goal and not necessarily a good one if we want to see things happen. So what most teams need to do is move closer to the center of the continuum, invite a little bit of productive conflict into the mix, actively encourage debate and dialogue around ideas, not personalities. Ideas and issues should be the target of our cooperative conflict. So we should be really towing the line in either direction. Look for the center where we're actively engaged. We're really pushing back on ideas that are not productive, or that when there are different ideas, we should evaluate them as a team, cooperate together and say, hey, how does this idea work? We should be actively engaged in this process to come up with the best solution to any problem that we have. We often don't do that as teams because conflict can be scary for teams. We don't have the confidence that our team can recover if we cross that line and get over into negative conflict. If people say things they didn't mean to say or shouldn't have said, we're afraid. So we're afraid we won't come out the other side in a healthy place. But when a team does know how to engage in constructive, collaborative, cooperating conflict and recover from the times when we cross over the line, we're able to be more creative, innovative. We're able to solve tough problems quickly and come to the best solution because all of our talents, all of our energy, all our creativity is engaged. And that's really where we want to be, to understand that conflict is natural, conflict is necessary, and the strongest, most connected, most productive teams are going to be teams that have the courage to push that envelope and engage in conflict that will make them a stronger team, a better team, a team that comes up with the best solution more often than not. So, quick recap. Why is there conflict? We have different opinions. We have different ideas. There are problems that need to be solved. There are issues that need to be addressed, and we all have a different idea about how to do that. And as individuals, we probably would make different choices. One of the things we need to remember as a team, it's not about the individual idea, the individual choice. It's about the team, what's best for the group, not just what's best for me. So there's conflict because there are different people involved. There are different opinions and ideas. So how do we resolve issues and make decisions in the midst of honest conflict based on issues? We engage in healthy, cooperative discussion about the issues and look for cooperative solutions where everyone wins. So as we look at conflict, as we consider how we engage in conflict, the way that we handle tension individually as a person makes a big difference when it comes to the conflict and to the group decision-making process. At this time, it's worth reviewing your DISC profile. We were not going to do that today, but consider how you're made. How do you respond to tension? Are you a fight or flight person? To be aware of that and fight the tendency to fight for the sake of fighting or to flee just because it's uncomfortable. Any extreme needs to be avoided, and we go to the middle to work together. So there are broadly 5 styles of handling conflict. Most of us will find one of these as we go through, and you'll say, yeah, that's kind of me most of the time. It does change depending on the group and our perceptions of the group, where we feel like our place in the group is. The issue we're talking about, and it's important to us, will affect how we approach it. Our goals in each different setting change, so that also will affect how we approach conflict. So the first style we look at is competing. When you look at competing in conflict, we're talking about a primary emphasis on satisfying one's own concerns. I'm competing against your ideas. I want mine to win because my idea, for some reason, is I consider it more important than yours. My opinion's more important than yours. My idea is better than yours. For whatever reason, the primary emphasis becomes I want my idea to win. This is a win-lose proposition. So when we think about this, a competitor, like a competitor in sports, is going to be very active. They're going to be active in the discussion because they're trying to convince people their idea is best. There's something in discussions in conflict we'd call disclosiveness. This is how open am I? How transparent am I about my goals, about my reasons for wanting this? A competing style is going to be very low or maybe moderate in disclosiveness because their true motivations might not be good. They might be selfish. So it's going to be kind of closed off to other people's examining their motives. They're going to be very active in the discussion, but low on the scale of disclosiveness. They are going to be very highly involved. They aggressively pursue their personal goals and usually take whatever initiatives they can to get there. They're usually not very flexible. When you're competing to win, you really can't be flexible with the other side. If you're flexible, ultimately your idea might not win. So going into a conflict with competition in mind this is win-lose. If you get your idea, then my idea loses. There's usually people are attached to their idea and are unwilling to seek a compromise or any other solution, so somebody's idea has to be put aside. So it's a win-lose proposition when competing is our primary goal. Another very common one is just avoiding, depending on your personality type. Any kind of conflict of any kind, any tension is bad, and you want to avoid it at all costs. So they just run away from it. People who avoid conflict show low levels of concern for their own and other parties' interest. It is basically, if you look at it, saying, whatever happens, I give up all my rights and I don't care. And this may not be the best solution for you either, but it's tense, so I don't want to deal with it. So really, we're not concerned about the best for us or anybody else if our primary goal is just to avoid it for the sake of avoiding it. Usually, avoiders are not very active in the conflict, not very active in the discussion. Sometimes it would border on apathy. That could come across as if they just don't care. They're avoiding the conflict. Usually they exhibit a low level of disclosiveness as well. They're not really going to be transparent, or, well, they're not going to be involved. You're not going to know anything about what they really feel because they've avoided and put themselves out of discussion altogether. So avoiding is not usually a healthy way to approach conflict in a team setting. Accommodating basically just give in to other people. So it may start off engaged in it, but someone else has a strong opinion, so they just back down. So sometimes accommodating can be intentional. It's intended to improve a bad or shaky relationship, or we say, we have a good relationship, this issue is not that important to me, so I'll give in. So usually accommodators are highly flexible. Their level of activeness in the discussion is usually going to be lower, and low to moderate levels of disclosiveness. They may or may not give some of their motivations and thoughts behind their ideas, not going to defend them very well. The next one we want to look at is compromising. Compromising attempts to find an intermediate position or trade-offs. So we can both get some of our goals in exchange for not getting others. So it involves people that are moderately assertive, but they're going to cooperate pretty well too, because both of us have to give in to get some of what we want. So compromisers are usually moderate to highly active in the discussion and the debate because they want to see some kind of resolution reached, even if it's not all of what they want. They want some kind of resolution that's going to be healthy for everybody to some degree. So they're going to may or may not be disclosive till their true motivations, because they're going to trade off some of their goals for moving forward. And then the last one we want to look at really quickly is collaborating. This is the style that most people who study conflict recommend, because its goal is to develop a solution that meets all of the important needs of both parties. So we all have a hierarchy of goals in any discussion. So collaboration means let's try to meet all of our main goals. In a successful collaboration, people are generally pleased and enthusiastic about the resolution. So yeah, I got a lot of what I thought was really important, and the things that didn't come through, well, they weren't quite as important to me. Quite often the process, if done well, means we learn more about ourselves and we see new possibilities for the future. Good collaboration opens up ideas, possibilities that we didn't know were there before. So for this to work, everybody must have a vested interest in the outcome. We've got to be engaged, be really committed to the process and following through on whatever the decisions are made. It's part of our future together as a team. So it means putting aside hostilities, grudges, working hard to resolve conflict that satisfies all of our major interests. So collaborating, the focus is on the issues and the interest, not the people involved. A lot of times people have maybe negative views of each other or just incomplete views of each other, and the discussion can be about some trait that you have or some tendency that you have, rather than let's look at the issue at hand. To collaborate well, we need to recognize that both sides have potential strengths and potential weaknesses, and that it's unusual for one position to be entirely, completely right or wrong. We can have honest differences of opinions, have different views about how something might be carried out, and it's not that one is absolutely the only way, or this is the best way. There are good and bad things about any idea, and part of our putting forward ideas is often thinking about, if I have to do it myself, this is the way I would do it. But as a team, we want to recognize that it's not just me, it's everybody's effort. And a lot of times other people's efforts are going to allow any resolution to be done better, at a higher level, ultimately with more of our common interest reach. So we try to understand each other's positions from the start. As this is a legitimate position, I want to understand it and why you value what you value, why you're putting forth this idea. And that might help me adjust my idea so that we come away with something that's better than what we started with. So for good collaboration, we need to explore a range of options, evaluate each option based on its strengths, its weaknesses, particularly in how those strengths and weaknesses address the issues that we're talking about and the interest that people have in whatever topic it is that we're talking about. So obviously, as we're putting forward this idea, collaboration is the goal most of the time. It's not without problems. It does require a great deal of time and energy. Creativity is not easy and quick for everybody. It takes thinking about the issues and discovering sometimes what is the real core issue. We may have to spend a lot of time exchanging ideas and offers and discussion about different things that could be changed before we can reach an acceptable solution. And it takes time to hammer through this. But I really believe that collaboration, having a common goal, helps us find the best solution in the end. Having said that, these different conflict styles do have times when each one might be appropriate for you as an individual as you're engaged in the process. As an example, competition. When quick, decisive action is vital. We don't have time to spend weeks because this opportunity or this threat is here right now, and we need to decide now. So there's a place where competition might be something that has to take place because we have to decide. On important issues where unpopular actions need to be implemented. Now, there's times when, this is super important. We have to do this, and there are times when it is appropriate for competition to be the way that we engaged. There are also people who take advantage of non-competitive behavior. Now, depending on the group, and we're going to hope and pray that we don't have this kind of interaction, but there are people that can take advantage of a group of people who come together to collaborate or to work together and say, oh, they're not going to really compete, so I can come through and push through my agenda. Okay, when someone like that is recognized, it may be that the group has to take action and win. There can be win-lose situations where there's a harmful agenda being pushed through if that's recognized. Collaboration. When our goal is to find a solution where both sets of concerns are too important to compromise, when our objective is to learn and grow together, we want to merge insights from different perspectives. All these are times when collaboration is the best way to go forward. We want to grow in understanding. We want to do better. When we need to find the best solution and have the time to do that, collaboration is almost always going to come up with better solutions in the long run. Avoidance, not usually recommended, but sometimes personally say, well, this issue doesn't really matter to me. I don't see that it's that important. Are there other things that are more important? So on this issue, I'm just going to set it out. Sometimes you look at the issue and say, well, the potential disruption for this issue is so great that it's just not worth the benefit. It doesn't compare to the benefits of resolving it quickly and in a way that doesn't lead to further conflict. Sometimes we can avoid it for now, let people cool down if things have gotten hot, and regain perspective, and then approach it again from another angle later. So there are times when avoiding it at the moment could be appropriate, but in general, we want to work toward healthy conflict, healthy collaborative conflict. We're working toward the best solution, not avoiding making the decisions. Accommodation, when you find you're wrong, then it's sometimes willing to go, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that. So, okay, I want to learn and I want to be reasonable. So now that I see some things I didn't understand before, accommodating might be the best approach. When issues are obviously more important to other people than yourself, then it would be a time to say, well, I see some problems, but this is much more important to you than me, so I'm still going to contribute. I'm not going to avoid the issue, but I'm going to be more accommodating to the other person's ideas because I don't see this issue as that important. When harmony and stability are especially important. For whatever reason we have a tense time, we don't want to disengage and avoid the issue, but sometimes we can be more accommodating if the issue is not super important, to make sure that we do maintain good relationships and still reach the best decision that we can. Compromise. When goals are beneficial, we have a good purpose in mind, but it's not worth the effort. Or when opponents with equal power, you have two people who they're pretty much equal in their position and their strength of their ideas, and they're committed to mutually exclusive goals. These are just not compatible very well. We may have to really seek a compromise. Sometimes that's going to be something we have to do to arrive at the best solution in the least amount of time. We don't have infinite amount of time to make every decision, so some of our decisions we'll have to recognize, this is maybe not the absolute best decision we could make if we had a year to talk about it, but we don't. So let's find the best decision that we can make right now and move on. So that is definitely a time when that is important. And usually it's as a backup to collaboration, as we've tried to find a good creative solution that meets all of our goals, that accomplishes all of our purposes and satisfies everyone in a timely manner. If we can't do that, we may need to compromise some of our some issues that are important to us. So this has been a brief, quick look at conflict. We will hopefully practice collaborative conflict much more in the future. Have a great day.